right, welcome everyone. This is the last March meeting of the Environment Subcommittee. So we've had a lot of meetings this session. I'm sure we'll have a few more, but so today the goal is to review the reprint of House Bill 583, which of course is the cross-file of SB 414, which we just heard in committee a little while ago. So if you had a chance to look at the reprint, you'll see there are a fair number of amendments. The House is making a fair number of amendments to the bill. Some of the amendments reflect amendments that the Senate put on either in committee or on the floor. And so what I'd like to do is kind of use the cheat sheet, the summary that actually the Senate had originally put together, and sort of I've marked up to indicate the changes in the House bill compared to the last version of the House bill that we looked at. Remember, we went over the different sections in the summary over, I think, gosh, it was probably 3 meetings. And so still using that template, since a lot of the bill is in there, but I've highlighted in italics what has been changed. So I figure we'll start there with going through the summary and the items that have changed. And I'll also refer you back to the page in the reprint where that that new section or change section is. So does that sound okay, everyone? Okay, great. All right. So trees. So a key change is the funding source for it and the timing. We pushed back the start date of the tree program by a year to fiscal year 2023. And in terms of the funding, the first year would still be by using money from the Bay Restoration Fund, $15 million to support the tree initiative for that fiscal year. But then afterwards, from between 2024 and the new end date of 2031, we would be using general funds. So there wouldn't be any tapping into of the Bay Restoration Fund. Can
I comment on that briefly?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred to not use the BRF at all, but apparently for fiscal reasons having to do with the Federal Recovery Act, that there's a feeling that we really can't start this until the future. And so I think 1 year of 1 or 2 years even of using the BRF is perfectly fine. I want us to keep the commitment to trees, but I'd really like to not use the BRF as much as possible. I'd like to avoid that in the future. So.
Sure, makes sense. And we did push it back a year. Initially, the tree initiative was going to begin in the next fiscal year, but we pushed it back to fiscal year 2023 because there are some projects under the BRF for which funding commitments have already been made. And so to avoid any question about whether the money in the BRF for those projects will be there or not, we pushed the start date to fiscal year 2023, which is again just the 1 year in which we'll be using the BRF allocation, and then after which would be general funds. So everything is shifting forward by a year. A couple other changes that I think are notable. The Chesapeake Bay Trust will still be the administrator of the Urban Trees Program. Some changes that were made in the Senate, which I think are good ones. It includes, and this is the italics in the middle of the first page of the summary, Chesapeake Bay Trust shall prioritize grant applications for organizations located in the underserved areas where the tree planting projects will be implemented. Sort of makes sense. We want to support organizations that are in the underserved areas that are the target where the urban tree program will be doing the tree planting. And then also there's a new section that says that the Chesapeake Bay Trust shall prioritize grant applications that include plans for engaging organizations and groups located in underserved areas to implement and maintain tree planting projects. The Chesapeake Bay Trust has very good track record of engaging as grantees, local community groups, local nonprofits. And so the idea is with this funding for the urban tree programs, it'll serve as a further catalyst to for engaging organizations and groups in the significant tree planting that would happen. Yeah, so those are the changes to the tree planting section. They start page 40 and go through 46 of the reprint. Any questions about that? Okay. Well, then let's move on. Now, the part of the bill where there are the biggest changes is the sections that relate to energy efficiency and clean energy. Most of the building related sections that were in the original bill have been taken out. We have replaced it with some other building sections, which are in italics on line 2. There was a provision in the original bill about certain buildings, commercial buildings, having to be solar ready. Would mean 40% of the roof would have to be solar ready. We've changed that to say that a new commercial building that meets the requirements of an appendix in the International Energy Conservation Code. It's generally buildings that are 5 stories or less, that they have to have a roof that is at least 40% solar ready, reflective, which means basically material or paint that is put on the roof to reflect sunlight and energy, or a green roof, as we understand it, a vegetative roof. And these requirements would apply starting January 1, 2023. And why don't I just run through all the new provisions with respect to energy efficiency and clean energy, and then, actually the building sections, and then I'll stop and take any questions. There was a provision in the bill which says that the high performance building requirements for state buildings, that we're expanding that to include any building that receives minimum 25% of state funding. So that could conceivably include local projects that have received at least 25% state funding. So the high performance building requirements that are in existing code would apply to those projects. The bill had changed the high performance building requirements for these projects to basically a higher standard, net zero. But instead, this will, as the bill is amended here, the same high performance building standards would be in place. It does clarify that high performance means achieving a certified silver LEED rating. And then that's to address a situation where in some cases, at least sometimes with schools, they actually didn't have to get a certification of their LEED rating. Then goes on to adopt the most recent version of the International Green Construction Code, requires adoption of each subsequent version of the IGCC. The International Green Construction Code is an alternative green code for the commercial sector, and it was something that we authorized as a compliance or as a green code mechanism 10 years ago, but really inadvertently. I'm going to say I was the bill sponsor at the time, so this was inadvertent. We just authorized the then current version and didn't authorize any new versions of the code. As you probably know, building codes are updated pretty much every 3 years. So the last one, the IGCC, is from, I think, 2012, is out of date. This is and then the next section, and I'll ask the chair to discuss this, since this was his idea, deals with geothermal and comparable systems for new state buildings. So, Mr. Chairman, if...
Yeah, I've had to withdraw 2 of my bills in other committees because who can count on them? So the geothermal bill was something that I've been working on for 2 years in appropriations. And what my intention was to require the use of geothermal systems in school construction as long as the net present value payback period was 15 years or less. And what I've done is I've broadened the language to include geothermal or other energy saving technologies in keeping with, what was that standard in the legislation? I'm not looking at the language right now, but there's some international standard associated with that. It's the
International Commercial Code, I think, the ICC. Yeah.
Right. And so basically what I'm attempting to do is I'm attempting to create a requirement that geothermal or energy saving technologies be used as long as the payback period is 15 years or greater. Last year when I tried to put in a bill, I tried to pass a bill to require geothermal. They said, well, what if the building is built on top of granite and it costs $1 million to do it? And my attempt to properly address that is to say, okay, if the system pays for itself in 15 years or less, you have to do it. Otherwise, you don't have to do it. And that's my way of accounting for, if there's a difficult building envelope or if there's a difficult land or something like that. So that was my intention. And so I withdrew that bill, and I thought it would be appropriate to put it in this omnibus package.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so that would apply to new state buildings, buildings that receive more than 50% state funds, and also—
Right. So it would include schools. It wouldn't exclude schools.
Right. And also, it includes those situations where the state is not actually, or a locality which is using a lot of state funds, is not actually building the particular structure, but where the state is going to be a significant tenant, where the state will occupy more than 50% of the building for a lease of at least 15 years. So, we thought we should capture those buildings where, even if the state is not the owner, it's going to be a significant tenant, when one or more agencies or departments. So then the next item is, it relates to the fact that MDE has, through the Climate Commission, has been looking at least cost options for carbon reductions in the building sector. They've started that study, they've hired a consultant for it, but to continue with the study, they need additional funding in the range of $100,000, maybe $100,000 to $150,000. And my understanding was that they didn't have that funding identified. So this would say that MDE shall complete its study on least cost options, so that this building work group under the purview of the State Climate Commission can continue with its work. And then the next item is tasking MEA and the Power Plant Research Project to conduct a study to identify and assess policies and cost considerations relating to solar installations on commercial and industrial property. Apparently, there are a number of issues relating to solar installation on large-scale sort of roof projects on commercial and industrial property that could use additional study. So this tasks MEA and the PPRP with doing that. So with that, let me stop for any questions about the building provisions. And again, I should say that there were provisions in the original bill that dealt with building retrofits in the private sector, having net zero building performance requirements for new state buildings, energy modeling requirement for new buildings. Those have been amended out. Instead, we're putting in these items while keeping one or two segments of the original bill.
I have a quick question, but I think Delegate Ruth had her hand up.
Oh, yes,
First,
you did. Sorry, Delegate Ruth.
Oh, that's okay. But my questions may not be quick. So if yours are quick, if you'd like to go ahead, Delegate Boyce.
Oh, sure. Just really quick. So when you said these buildings would have to comply, even if the state wasn't the owner, but they were the occupant, I'm assuming that this would be a newly built building and or a renovated building for which they would know ahead of time that these folks would be tenants and therefore had to conform to the legislation. Yeah? No.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chairman, let me ask you to chime in, but the way I read the language, it just applies to new state buildings buildings for which the state is going to be a major tenant. Was
That's
that-
that's the intention.
Okay.
Kristen, did you want?
I just, I'm trying to thumb through it. Oh, you know what? I'm thinking about another bill. I was thinking there was a delayed effective date that would have shown when it became effective, but I'm sorry, that is for a different provision. So I strike that. Sorry for interrupting.
No problem. No problem. Okay, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of, I've read through the summary and also the actual language in the bill, but I'm kind of confused about the changes. I apologize in advance. So what are the requirements of Appendix CA? And how is that different from requirements in the original bill?
Yeah, the original bill said that, maybe Kristen, I'll ask you to help me on this. I believe it said that new commercial buildings, 25,000 square feet or more, had to have a solar-ready roof, and that was defined as a roof that was 40%, basically could accept solar panels on at least 40% of the surface of the roof. So this is different in sort of defining what are covered buildings, buildings that are subject to the requirement. As basically 5 stories or less. There are some other details in the appendix concerning, I believe, solar eligibility for effective solar panels on that roof. But basically, it's buildings that are 5 stories or less, and this changes the roofing requirements to provide an option: 40% solar ready, or reflective, or green, or some combination.
Okay, so I mean, I certainly think that's good. I like the inclusion of the green roofs option. But is there still like a size? We're eliminating the 25,000 square foot. Is there still a size requirement?
It's generally buildings that are 5 stories or less.
Regardless of the square footage.
Right, that's right.
Okay.
And I can, if you like, I can pull up that appendix. It has a little bit more, it's generally 5 stories or less, but a couple other items, which I can't recall, but that's the main threshold.
So this would still apply to new commercial buildings?
That's correct.
And is there still a provision for significant renovations? Or is that?
No, the retrofit section was taken out.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, other questions?
Yeah, can I just say one quick thing? Just from a financial standpoint, these decisions on whether or not to retrofit in this fashion can be complicated. And I remember actually I was talking to a property owner, and he had one of those very large buildings that was maybe 3 stories high, and it was a big, kind of like a big box store, which would seemingly be a perfect candidate for solar, because it's got a lot of roof, unlike an apartment building, which is tall and thin and has very little roof for the number of units underneath it. This is something that seemingly would be a good candidate. And he said, yeah, no, I want to be able to sell the building in 5 years. I just don't think it makes any sense for me in this instance. And I just think about the financial complications associated with a mandate of that sort. On the other hand, spraying white paint on your roof is a relatively cheap way to avoid heat island effects. That's been pretty well documented. And so, I thought that was a good, that or a green roof were good alternatives if it doesn't make sense to put solar, because rooftop solar, as I guess I've said many times, is a kind of an expensive proposition in a lot of cases. Although with a flat roof, it's a lot better than with a residential roof where you can't change the orientation of the building and you can't vary the angle of tilt of the roof.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry thank you for that, but then I have one more question. For the renovation portion in the original bill, wasn't there a waiver if they wouldn't be able to recoup the costs, or am I confusing that with something else? Sorry, it's a complicated bill.
Well, I think there was a waiver. Local jurisdiction could provide a waiver if the cost, there wouldn't be cost recovery within 15 years.
Okay. And I wondered if I could ask maybe Jamie if he has thoughts on this new provision with the appendix and how that might impact.
And by the way, before Jamie speaks, I did put into the chat box a link to that particular code, which is referenced in the bill.
Thank you.
Oh.
I thank you, Delegate, for the question. I mean, we really appreciate all the work that the committee and the subcommittee and that the chair has done on this bill. I think that we recommend passage of and acceptance of the amendments as they are, and a speedy passage through the House. I mean, I think we're only just seeing the amendments today, so we haven't even, like all of you, had a chance to think through all of them. But I think the important part is that this subcommittee today pass this out so that it can move quickly through the House. And I'm sorry I don't have a more in-depth or knowledgeable thing to say at this point, but I hope we can continue this conversation as we go forward and possibly in a conference committee.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and let me also say that this legislature and this legislator in particular has not been shy about beefing up environmental regs, as I felt more sure-footed about it. So I don't want anyone who has an environmental leaning to feel that this is the last opportunity to address these issues.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, Delegate Otto.
Thank you. Thank you. I still have some concerns about what I asked the senator about the property tax implications. The section on the Senate bill.
Mm-hmm.
It's on page 42.
Right. I mean, I can discuss. We could discuss that more right now if you like, Delegate. Admittedly, this is just an educated guess, but my sense is that this will be at most a modest. This will have a modest impact on local personal property tax because there just aren't that many community solar projects that'll meet these requirements. Community solar projects, by and large, have been ones which have been targeted as customers, as folks who benefit from the energy. They haven't targeted low to moderate income households. And so that's what actually this section is in response to try to incentivize at least some community solar projects to do that. And they also have to be installed on rooftops, parking lots, roadways, or brownfield locations. My understanding is just right now, at least in Central Maryland, I don't know elsewhere, there may be 2 or 3 community solar projects which would currently qualify under this, but the goal is to have more, but I doubt it would be a deluge. Again, we're talking about—
Well, that's my concern is for our local government greeted the solar projects and has filled the grid. We pretty much have filled everything up. It's like pouring water through a funnel upside down. We don't have transmission lines down there, and there's a substantial developments of it. I bet I'd have more acres of solar than any locality in the state.
Yeah, this wouldn't.
And that's the only means of the local government getting any revenue out of that.
Sure, but this would, number one, this would be for new community solar projects that, again, fit these criteria.
If it's community or even personal on the rooftops, of course, that wouldn't enter into the personal property part of it.
Right.
Well,
No,
but let me say this though. I mean, if a farmer has 50 acres in solar and he or she is getting a check from a power developer, that's income that's taxable.
Yeah.
There's an income tax benefit in that respect.
Most of these projects, they purchased the property from the project, probably sold them 3 times since, but.
It isn't like a farmer who says, I want to put 50 acres.
So some are leased, that's true, but the developers bought the property and put the solar system in.
I still think they'd be a taxable entity in the local government, I think.
Yeah, that's how we're getting it now. I just don't want this to interfere with that. And the way I first read it, it's an exemption of electricity generating items.
Well, I mean, you're right about the preemption for local business personal property tax, but I don't think this doesn't have anything to do with income tax.
No, but they don't get any of the income out of that, apparently.
Okay. Huh.
okay. No,
that's what we're concerned about is the personal property tax. The power panels themselves and the equipment there are these mega projects that are there, and that's how the county has been able to collect some revenue from those items.
Yeah, but hold on. So you're saying if I, Kumar Barve, buy a gigantic farm in your district and then I convert it to solar, you're saying that would be taxed against my income here in Montgomery County?
Well, that would be considered, those panels and the generating equipment would be considered equipment, and they would be taxed as personal property. I mean, not all counties have a personal property tax. It's collected by the state. Somerset happens to have one. They have a means to give businesses an exemption for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, this, just to note, Delgadado, this would not apply if it's on farmland.
Well, it's not farm anymore. There's no farm in power generation.
Okay.
If I can't eat it or wear it, that's not farming.
Okay. Okay.
So I'd like that clarified, or let's exempt out the property tax provisions.
Well, let's see. Is there anyone? Mr. Chairman.
Or somebody smarter than me read it and tell me that they're not including these mega generation operations. I'm all for the community deal to have some measure of it.
Why don't we have somebody ask a staffer at Ways and Means what the tax ramifications are?
Please do.
Okay.
Is it
For the
about what
record,
it
Otto,
applies
you're
to?
very smart.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the question.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at is article tax property 7237 on line
Yes.
15 of
I'm here.
page 42 on the Senate version.
It's page 39 on the House bill. And so you just want to, so this applies to machinery that's part of a community solar energy generating system that's defined under the public utilities article.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
But those large systems, for-profit systems, should be paying something.
Kristen, I'd like to know from Ways and Means what the income tax policy ramifications.
Well, it's not the income tax, it's the
not income
personal
tax.
property tax.
No, but I mean, if you're losing a property tax and gaining an income tax benefit, I think that's something we ought to know.
Well, I have a sawmill down the street that they have to pay personal property tax on the saw and the equipment that they have.
Well, we can,
Chair Barbe, would you mind stating your question again, just so that I have the right question?
I don't want to exempt from personal property tax these businesses that are generating power.
Okay, so this community solar energy generating system
No,
binding code,
the community is different. That's a smaller.
but that's the language. I guess, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult.
Okay, well, maybe I'm not
It applies to
understanding
the
what
bill.
community power is.
It doesn't apply to anything other than that as drafted.
Okay,
Right.
well,
It has to be-
that makes me feel better.
right, it has to be a community solar energy generating system. It has to be on rooftops, parking lots, roadways, or brownfields. And it has to serve more than half of its power has to go to low to moderate income customers, which is rare in the community solar business. It's just not a segment of the potential market where you have many solar projects being installed. So, so again, I think my understanding is in Central Maryland, you have maybe three existing ones or ones that might come online. So there are very few. But does that help, Delegate Otto?
Well, I guess I'm getting confused with it. It says A, except as provided in subsection B of this section, personal property is exempt from property tax if the property is machinery or equipment used to generate electricity or steam for sale or hot or chilled water for sale that is used to heat or cool a building. That's the things that the exception of B is, that's when it starts talking about the
new language is under C, starting in, I'm on the House bill, so that would start in line 17
line 17 of
the House bill, page 39.
On the reprint,
yes.
The reprinting of the bill.
Page 39.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you go to line 17.
Yep.
And that's the new language. The other language above is existing law. And so this provision is limited to the community solar
Okay.
systems.
All right. You've
Additional
satisfied
requirements.
me that somebody is smart enough to read this as
But
explained.
if there's a question beyond that, then let me know. But as
Okay.
what it applies to,
I appreciate that.
I think we're good there.
I don't know, there's a lot more there to digest, but that's one that, as I browsed through it today, made me concerned.
Okay, Delegate Otto. Do you still have?
So
questions?
so the House bill is different than the Senate? These amendments?
Yes, I mean, these amendments make the House bill, parts of it substantially different from the Senate bill.
I don't think it's different though with respect to the,
Not on this section, though.
No, they
Not on this section.
look the same.
Yeah. Okay. Is it okay to move on, Delegate Otto?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't have another question on top of my head right now.
Okay. All right, let's see. On continuing on with new changes, concrete. This is incorporating much of a bill that Delegate Sample Hughes has introduced concerning climate-friendly concrete. There was an error in the summary that I put together. In the second line, the relevant agency is the Board of Public Works, not MDOT. But as introduced the legislation would have said that state agencies that are involved in awarding contracts for concrete and buildings or other uses to give a 5% preference for this climate friendly concrete, and it's defined much more specifically than just climate friendly concrete. And so instead, we've included a provision that says that state agencies shall give a price preference as determined by the Board of Public Works on this issue. Kristen, do you want to elaborate on that section? That's page 49.
Yeah, that you described it well, that it's just that it does require entities that would be awarding contracts for concrete to give a percentage price preference, and as you said, that would be determined by the board. I'm just trying to think, like, if the language I have here matches. I have the board shall adopt regulations to implement the section, including regulations that require units to establish a percentage price preference for the procurement or required use under the contract of the concrete. I'm wondering if I should clarify more to like how you described it, like shall give a percentage price preference, comma, as determined by the Board of Public Works. I don't have it written that way. I think we can do that. That's what your intent is. I'm thinking that it might be better to be drafted that way.
Is the definition similar to the definition that was used in Delegate Sample Hughes's bill?
She had it, I think it was up to 5%. That was taken out.
Okay.
So that's the difference between the bills, is that the percentage is stated in the House bill that this is based on, and this bill has the Board of Public Works to make the determination of what that percentage should be.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Kristen, that probably would be good to clarify.
I think Delegate Ruth has a question.
Delegate Ruth, yes. You're on mute, Delegate Ruth.
Never mind, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Oh, no question? Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, could you discuss the next item, the Solar Land Use Commission?
Right. So as you probably know, there's pretty much a move. Well, let me preface all of this by saying that the cost, environmentalists are running around the country basically saying that solar energy is the cheapest form of energy, cheaper even than natural gas or coal. And that's true, but solar energy is like dogs. There are lots of different breeds. And most people, when they think of solar energy, think of solar on roofs of homes or of buildings. And that's not the kind of solar that's really inexpensive. The kind of solar that's inexpensive is terrestrially mounted solar energy. And the reason that kind of energy is so much less expensive is because, number one, there's no cost associated with going up on a rooftop, which automatically increases your workers' comp insurance costs for your workers. Number two, you can have solar panels that follow the sun, which you can't do on a residential roof. Number three, you can actually orient it in the proper way, whereas on the roof of your house, if your roof isn't pointing the right way, you can't even put solar up. And so solar in fields is the form of solar energy that's truly affordable. Now, in Montgomery County, in Howard County, in Harford County, in a lot of counties, local governments are banning this kind of solar energy. And so what the purpose of this provision is to put together a group of stakeholders to begin to examine, and by stakeholders, I mean not just environmentalists and electric power generators, but also the Farm Bureau and other land preservationists, to examine what a good strategy would be for establishing solar in fields. And that was going to be another bill of mine, but I decided to withdraw it. The idea here is that you have to get everybody at a table: farmers, land preservationists, electric power developers, people who know who are stakeholders, who know what they're talking about. You need to get them all in a room and have them to start to establish what the parameters ought to be for responsible use of terrestrially mounted solar energy. And then just as an addendum, I will say that if we as a state, county by county, ban solar in fields, then basically we can't achieve any of our renewable energy goals without tripling people's electric power rates. And that's not an acceptable outcome. So it's my hope with this language that we get everybody who's a responsible stakeholder around a table to begin to discuss these issues.
Thank you. Yeah, and that language is at 49 to 50, and it would require the commission that's set up to report its findings and recommendations by June 1st of 2022.
Right, and there's no mandate here except for the recommendations.
Okay, any questions from the subcommittee?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the representatives here, and I don't see any like county representatives unless I'm missing it. And if, you know, the counties have concerns about this, should there be somebody from MACO or representing the counties?
I think we can assume that they're opposed. It would be like asking a member of the archdiocese what their position on the death penalty is. You know, I think that when I think of stakeholders, I think of farmers, I think of land preservationists and environmentalists. I'd rather go straight to the horse's mouth.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I wish now I hadn't made that analysis about that analogy, the archdiocese and the death penalty. Sorry about that, folks.
Quite all right. Okay, so the next section, let's move along into vehicles. With respect to zero emission buses, there was not much change. The only change is actually taking the Senate amendments, which I asked Chairman Pinsky about during the bill hearing, and those are in italics, middle of page 3 of the summary, which says, and basically the amendment says that if there aren't any available zero emission buses to meet the performance requirements for a particular use, an alternative fuel bus may be purchased for that. And also an amendment dealing with charging infrastructure to make sure that, you know, if we're going to be procuring zero emission buses, that there is the charging infrastructure to support the operation of zero emission buses in the state fleet. Yeah, so any questions about that? Yes, Delegate Boyce.
I quickly say the cost of the buses to be paid from the Transportation Trust Fund. Does MTA currently pay for their buses, the Transportation Trust Fund? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's my understanding. Kristen, is, as far as you know, that their costs, MTA's.
I don't know. I would have to look at that. I think that's correct. I just don't know.
Sorry, you know, of course, the MTA does have other operating revenue, but yeah, I guess, Delegate, we can confirm that the cost of bus acquisition. Okay.
I was just asking, it's not life or death for me. I'm fine.
Okay. Next section, dealing with passenger and light duty vehicles. The bill as, we had revised sort of the summary to talk about just purchasing passenger vehicles as zero emission vehicles and phasing in the acquisition of ZEVs for passenger vehicles. So that's still in the bill. But then we also add that beginning in fiscal year 2027, we will be purchasing other light duty vehicles to be, you know, that those purchases have to be zero emission vehicles as well. That continues, the phasing continues in subsequent fiscal years, so that beginning in fiscal year 2032, 100% of all other light duty vehicles purchased for the state fleet must be zero emission vehicles. So any questions about that?
Just one little sidebar. According to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, their assessment is that passenger vehicles in 2025 will be actually cheaper to purchase than gasoline vehicles. And if anything, Bloomberg New Energy Finance has been conservative in their estimates. So, I mean, by that time, it may not be a financial issue.
Yeah, I guess that's not taking into account all the the operational cost savings. I take it their estimate,
Right, that's for initial purchase.
just the upfront purchase cost. Okay.
By 2025.
Okay, page 4, emission reduction goals, planning and monitoring.
Hey, Sheila, did you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. So this vehicle, state vehicle electronic, EV convert or zero emissions conversion, I'm not saying that right. So that would be slower than in the original bill? A slower ramp up or?
Let's see, the original bill, hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can put my hands on
I'm
it.
sorry. I'm sorry
That's
to ask
okay.
so many difficult questions.
No, all these
No.
are good questions.
Better to hear them now.
Let's see.
I guess one thing is it's separating out passenger vehicles from other light duty vehicles. Is that correct?
Yeah, the
Say that
passenger
again.
vehicles are the ones that are coming down in price faster, whereas the light duty and pickup trucks like the Rivians and the Cyber trucks, they're just expensive right now.
Right, and vans.
The bill had, as it came over, the Senate bill would have applied to all light duty vehicles or in the fleet. And this has changed it to the passenger vehicles. And then there are still been goals added for the other light duty vehicles, but they are pushed back a little bit.
But
Actually,
it's still,
Kristen,
I'm sorry.
Kristen, I thought in the Senate they had amended it to just passenger vehicles, and then they had general intent language to electrify other light duty vehicles after then. I think the original bill did specify more ambitious goals for all light duty vehicles.
Okay. So yeah, maybe I'm getting my wires crossed between what was introduced, what came over from the Senate, and where we are right now. So, Delegate, are you looking at those provisions right now in the House bill?
I'm looking at the reprint. Yes. So it looks like passenger.
What page are you on? I must be passing it.
Page 32.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like passenger cars must be all zero emission by 2030 and other light duty vehicles by 2035.
And that's the Senate amendment.
Okay.
And then what this House bill amendments also include. So the Senate came over with just the passenger cars by 2030. And then, so the intent language that came over from the Senate, and so that starts in line 4, that 100% of passenger cars in the state be zero emission by 2030. This amendment also adds intent language that other light duty vehicles would be zero emission by 2035. The Senate amendments that with respect to the passenger cars, that is under at the bottom of the page, the goals that are set forth after line 17 in that paragraph 1, that's the language that was adopted in the Senate. And this amendment also sets the goals for, other light duty vehicles other than passenger cars.
Okay. Thank you.
You're right, it is confusing. The way, the provisions with respect to vehicles have been modified. Okay, any other questions about the vehicle section? Okay, so the next section, there is a change from the original bill. The new target for greenhouse gas reductions by 2030 is 50%. We do stick with the net zero emissions goal of 2045. Also, there was a an opportunity for the legislature to decide to change, lower or increase the original goals by 2025. Here we say that the net zero target must be reauthorized by 2030.
Can I speak a little bit about this?
Sure.
This is a bit of a cooperative effort between ourselves and the House Economic Matters Committee, and Chairman Davis and his people know a lot more about the electric power generation grid and capacities of, I don't understand that the way they do. And I also don't understand how the PJM network operates as well as they do. He has said that he thought 60% was a pretty tall order. And I have to take him at his word there. I mean, his committee has been the committee that over the years has expanded renewable energy portfolio standard requirements. And, admittedly, it's an area of expertise for his committee. And I think that we do well to listen to him on this. And 50% is, right now the standard is 40%. 50% would be a substantial, a 25% increase over where we currently are. And as I've said before, I hope the Public Service Commission gets back to me and Derek about the ramifications of the slowdown of terrestrially mounted solar so that we can start to have a better understanding of what the effect on ratepayers and of development is going to be. And so, I agree with going to 50%. And as I've said before, this legislature hasn't been bashful about expanding goals when we felt that they were reasonable. And so that's just my way of saying that I support the 50% as much as I would prefer 60. I think it's sensible to go to 50%.
Any questions about that or any other language in the targets? And then the other, yes,
if I may,
Delegate
Mr.
Otto.
Chairman, I think that's a smart move, is to move it to 50%. I'll go along with that. Or is that what you said it was now?
Yes, that's the new goal for 2030,
Right.
new target.
I had a plan. I see Matt Defoe's on here from Chop Tank Electric. He had said something to me that they had an amendment they wanted to see in the plan part of the.
Well, he's here.
If he
Matt,
could,
do you want to?
Hey,
There
Vice
he is.
Chair, Mr. Chairman, how's everyone doing? Good seeing this committee.
Just lovely.
Haven't seen you all in a while, but yeah, as Delegate Otto said, Chop Tank Electric Cooperative, we're an electric distribution cooperative on the Eastern Shore, and we are members of Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, which provides power to electric cooperatives in Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia. And over the last decade, we've been reducing our greenhouse gas emissions through our power supply, actually 42% since 2005. But our concern is more on the reliability of the electric power system that we currently have in place. And we do have amendment language that would go in this part of the plan, which would, the plan would be considered the impact of achieving the net zero statewide greenhouse gas emission, that it would look at the impact it would have on the reliability of the electric grid. And really, it's just showing that, whether it's natural gas, solar, wind, that these components are taking place, they're looked at pretty thoroughly through the plan. That's really all the amendment would do. We would just feel more at ease of that, especially our members who own the distribution and generation side. We're not an investor-owned utility, so we actually buy our power 100% wholesale from Old Dominion Electric Cooperative in long-term contracts. So that's why we have this concern of going out to meet this goal by 2045, that we would just have our investments that we have on the electric grid are looked at during the plan.
Okay, Matt, I do have a question. So the language that we have in here about plan specifications relate to the plan, the greenhouse gas reduction plan that MDE has to come up with to meet these goals. Typically, grid reliability issues are PSC issues. So would you be looking for PSC input on, provided to MDE when they're preparing their plans?
I think that, and you would also have to have some type of insight from the PGM regulators as well, because Maryland is part of this regional electric grid. So we all rely on energy coming in and out of the state, but also what we generate here, such as the Wildcat Point facility that we are member owners of in Cecil County, which provides very, very cost-effective baseline generation energy. So if we want to charge those electric cars, we got to have that reliable baseline energy being generated at all times. But yeah, I believe,
what kind of facility is that Wildcat?
It's a natural gas. It came online in 2018. So it's very new. It's state of the art, one of the cleanest in the region.
Mm-hmm. So you're wanting a report from the PJM network and the Public Service Commission?
Excuse me?
So your amendment, you want a report made by the PJM network and the Public Service Commission?
I think overall that when the department's putting in place this plan, that they shall consider the impact of achieving this net zero statewide goal, what the effect would have on the reliability of the electric grid. So we don't want the in the goal or in the plan to diminish the reliability of the electric grid that we have in place.
Okay, you have a drafted amendment?
I do, and this is very similar to amendment language that was passed in Virginia in 2020 in their Clean Economic Act. So I'll be more to share that with the vice chair and you, chairman, and members.
Sure. If you could get us that language, because the subcommittee will probably meet tomorrow.
Send it right over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Any other questions? The plan, otherwise, the plan specifications.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Obviously, as most people, most of us feel we need to move, advance this goal as quickly as we can. And I certainly respect that we can't advance it more quickly than is possible. And certainly the chair of ECM is the expert on this, but it's, obviously we're going to need to continue to look at this as we go along, and hopefully, as technology improves, we'll be able to adjust this. Thank you.
I mean, let me comment on this. There's reason to believe that there are major breakthroughs in grid level battery storage, whether it's, and I'm not talking about lithium ion batteries, I'm talking about liquid metal batteries and other liquid air batteries. We're on the cusp of a number of pretty breathtaking technological advances, but they don't exist yet. And so I think it's important for us to be cautious, but the minute something becomes affordable and available, I'm all in favor of leaping for it. And so that's sort of my feeling, at least.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I mean, the minute that technology becomes available, then renewable energy is suddenly going to become the cheapest form of electric power generation on Earth with reliability. And that means it's game over for everything else eventually.
Okay. Okay, great. The plan specifications, we did take the amendment that the Senate put on that allows reliance on carbon capture or storage technology if it's been scientifically proven to achieve verifiable carbon reductions. Okay, environmental justice. I'd like Delegate Boyce to discuss what we've done here, since she is really the legislature's leader on EJ issues and our representative on the commission. So Delegate Boyce, if you could discuss, what we did with this section, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we changed beginning on a page, I believe 12. So first of all, we just passed HB 1207. So I thought it was important that it would be consistent to this bill. So anything that was different from 1207 just kind of recommissioned the commission to do, I thought should be either similar or removed. And then on page 12, under the Article of the Environment, we changed it instead of, again, reminding people that the commission is not a department, it is not an agency, and is not a regulatory body, that it changed the language so that MDE is the individuals making the decision. And then, as you can see, in consultation with the other Department of Health, Department of Labor, and the commission to make decisions about methodologies identifying disproportionately affected communities, so on and so forth. And then I believe, I think that's it. I think I need to go up. I've got my two screens here, but it's not rolling with me like I'd like it to here.
Let's see, I think because it overlapped with HB 1207, we took out language about scheduling
Yes,
a number of public hearings and
all those things. So we just wanted to make it consistent with 1207, considering we just passed it. So any language that was different from there, or any language at all, was just because 1207 would cover that. And then again, changing the language at the bottom on page 12 regarding what the commission would do versus what the department would do in consultation with the commission. And then page, I believe, 13. Again, removing very specific tasks that the commission would do, which is not in their purview, but rather, again, having the department do those tasks and, of course, work with the commission to do so. There was page 13, I believe, I'm looking at this correctly, line 17 through 31.
right. Okay, great, thank you. Any questions about the environmental justice section of the bill? Okay, thank you, Delegate Boyce.
But before we leave this, I mean, there's another environmental justice bill we've got going with Tony Bridges.
That was 1207.
Okay.
That was the 1207 bill we're talking about that added some people and some elections and some other tasks.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, the top of page 5, left in the, the important language about establishing the Just Transition Employment and Retraining Working Group. One thing I forgot to add was that the Senate made some changes, it's page 20 to 21 of the reprint, to the membership. Actually starting, I guess, on page 19. 19 to 20 on the membership, and then added a couple items that are to be researched by the working group. But otherwise, the working group section is substantially the same. Any questions about that? Okay, and then monitoring methane emissions from landfills, that language is the same. And then, in terms of the funding, just sort of to wrap up, what we do need to get back to in a power-related question that's come up. But to wrap up at least what's in the summary, in terms of use of dedicated funds, you may recall that earlier, the first version of the bill would have used the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, otherwise known as the C for the SIF, to fund the upfront difference in cost for the net zero schools, which were to be built, one per school district under the original bill. That has, since that section's been taken out, that SIF funding falls out. One thing I neglected to say was that the SIF had been earmarked to pay for the difference in purchase price for the light duty or passenger vehicles. Now we're going to be looking to the funding that the state's going to be getting from the federal government to fund the car electrification instead of tapping into the SIF for that. So there's bottom line is no use of the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, which had been a concern to some advocates, the fact that we were going to use potentially a fair amount of funding for that. About the Bay Restoration Funds, for the first year of the tree planting program, it is $15 million, but then, after that it is general funds to support the tree initiative. And then $1.25 million from the Coastal Bays 2010 Trust Fund each year, 2023 to 2031, to support DNR work in connection with the tree planting program, specifically to hire some, increased funding for technical assistance contractors in the DNR Forest Service, and some other costs. So, does anyone have any questions about that? The funding, since they have changed a fair amount from the original bill. Okay,
Got a couple hands up.
What's that? Oh, I don't know why I keep on missing your hand, Delegate Ruth, but anyway.
He likes you.
Yeah, nothing personal, really. But
Oh, sure.
yeah, okay.
You just know I'm trouble whenever I raise my hand.
Yes, that's right.
Delegate Boyce also has her hand up.
Okay.
I don't know who was first, but I just wanted to ask why the net zero loan fund for the schools was removed, and maybe that was already covered, and I apologize if I missed it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I guess there wasn't a specific reason that I can say, but part of it was to minimize impact on the Strategic Energy Investment Fund. Funding for that would have come from that fund. So that was part of the reason.
The chairman of the ECM committee and the ECM committee are very, I think they feel as protective of that fund as I do of the BRF. I guess is the best way to describe it.
Thank you.
Delegate Boyce.
I'm going to ask some of the same lines for the Coastal Bays Trust Fund for 2023 through 2031. Would it be 1.25 million every year, or it would be every year as it just replenishes back to 120?
No, it would be each year.
So regardless of whether or not the prior amount was used up?
It's a good question. Maybe Kristen, if you could help out here. If for some reason to implement the 13, I think, technical assistance contractors and other expenses, DNR did not spend 1.25 million, then I guess, Kristen, with that money, whatever's left over would just refer to the fund for that year?
I think it may just stay there without an
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, if, let's say, only $1 million was spent and there's the, 250, I guess, thousand left, would it then be replenished by $1 million versus a whole nother 1.25? Does that make sense? You will replenish it to the amount per year, but it wouldn't be that. It would be 1.5 million. Just a question.
First, just tell me what page you're on, so I can just read the language.
Oh, I don't know. I was looking at the.
Oh, you're just looking at that. Okay. I thought I had most of a key of where everything was. Let me just.
This is page 42.
I mean, whatever the appropriation amount, that's each year. Okay.
Okay,
So if they had money left over, they would still be getting, they would still be able to use, but let me look at I want to look at the actual language just so I don't.
you said 42, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to 42. There it is. In each year.
Yeah, so that's the amount that's set in statute. So that's the number that would, so that would be, but that would be the total amount. It's a little bit different than what the amount that's coming in. That provision, the 1.25 million must be used for those positions.
I guess, Kristen, if for some reason those positions didn't take 1.25 million, then any balance would be returned to the fund each year, or is that the?
Yeah, so yeah, and that's, I think the transfer itself is what, 2.5 million that's coming in.
Mhm.
And so this is directing that amount to be used to fund, and if it's not, I guess it would go back in. I mean, it doesn't say, you know, what happens with the money, but this isn't I don't know if it would tie it up, if there is extra money, where that would go. If its use would now be considered, you know, designated for this purpose. I'll have to look into see if that needs to be tightened up.
Okay. That would be good. Yeah, any other questions on the?
Looks like Regina has her hand up.
Oh, I need to put it down. Sorry, I'm done. That was
God, I keep telling you that.
Oh my God, no, sorry.
Okay, so if we could circle back to the Empower issue that's come up, and I know Lisa Smith with the Public Service Commission is here, I believe. Lisa, yes, you are. Do you want to talk to this?
Hello, Chair Stein, Lisa Smith with the Maryland Public Service Commission. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's we understand that the question has come up concerning the Empower provisions of the bill and how that relates to, I guess, an ongoing study. And some language had been proposed. I don't know if it came from the PSC, but it's been accepted by Chairman Pinsky and also ECM. So we just wanted to get sort of a better handle on what it relates, what the issues are that it relates to.
Great, thank you so much for the opportunity to join the subcommittee. Thanks to Kristen, thank you, Chair Stein. The Public Service Commission it's been brought to our attention by members of the Empower Maryland Future Programming Work Group, which is a work group that was created by the commission and tasked with coming up with recommendations related to a report that the commission owes the General Assembly in 2022 regarding future goal structures for Empower. So it came to our attention that the text in Senate Bill 414 as it currently stands may not provide clear guidance on whether the legislature in fact intends for the work group and the commission to continue looking at new goal structures. These may be more emissions-based because the current amendment in Senate Bill 414 extends the current goal structure through 2026. So we're happy to report to General Assembly as you wish. We're happy to implement however you'd like, but we didn't, I guess there might have been an unintended consequence if this shut down all the work group efforts. So some of the environmental groups, Sierra Club reached out to us, and we completely agree. It could shut down the efforts if there isn't a clear intent for us to continue. So we're just looking for guidance, that's all.
Okay, I just put into the chat box some proposed language. And this is what had been sent to us by the Senate, by ECM. So I don't know if you could take a look at this and let us know if it addresses the concerns that you have.
I don't see anything yet, Chair.
I don't see it either.
Oh, maybe I have to hit, there we go.
Okay.
To hit the return button, return key. Okay.
Chat.
Lisa, I also sent you a copy of the amendment in your email. It might be, if it's easier to read that way.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think it's good because I think I'm looking at the language now. It does refer back to the uncodified language in the 2017 law. So that would clarify the intent, carry that intent from 2017 through regarding the report that we were going to be working on. That's the first section. And I'm just looking at, yeah, I think that looks good. The second section, Kristen, what does this part go to? I'm just looking. Oh yeah, it's still parallel. Yeah, I think that would do the trick. If the intent is to keep the work group going, keep the efforts going, I think that's clear.
Okay, just so this would satisfy your concerns, the commission, Public Service Commission's concerns.
Yes, I mean, I obviously haven't had time to float this by the commission, but I believe that this language would address concerns about lack of clarity or concerns that some of the work group members had about halting the work of the, I think this satisfies what we were asking for in our letter, yes.
Okay. Great, and if this evening you know, upon further review of this language, you say, well, this word or so should be tweaked, let us know. Also, I know that the Sierra Club had raised an issue, and there's someone here from the Sierra Club who can say whether this addresses their concerns as well.
They're not here.
Yeah, okay, well, maybe we can check back in with them. And just for our edification, the methodology and magnitude of the savings trajectory established in the public utilities article, could you sort of translate that for us?
So the language in the language in the 2017 law basically asks us to look at the goal structure. So currently it's the kilowatt hours versus I guess the work group is now looking at some other structures such as emissions, calculating emissions. And so that's the first part is the goal structure and just an entirely new goal potentially. And then the second part, I guess the magnitude and the trajectory. So the increases versus, you know, the current language in this bill, I guess just changes the magnitude, but not the goal structure. That's how I read it, but I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, that's helpful.
We also, just to let you know, Chair Stein, I think the subcommittee should know, another concern we had with the current goal structure is our ability to maintain cost effectiveness and achieve those increasing savings. One of the reasons the work group is looking at changing the goal structure, well, one is to better align with state policies and our greenhouse gas emissions goals, but another is we've used lighting programs to gain a lot of the savings in a cost-effective manner, and we're kind of reaching a point of diminishing returns. The lighting, you know, the markets, we've basically been successful, you know, in Maryland with Empower, and so now we need to look to some new models. So that was another reason that we'd like to look at.
So I guess you can only basically change a light bulb once.
Well, yeah, and the lighting market has changed, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that the Climate Commission's building work group had some ideas regarding, you know, recommendations of that deal with further building electrification, especially heat pumps. So I guess that's sort of in the basket of things that might be in the future for further ways to improve energy efficiency.
That's correct. And Amanda Best, our senior advisor at the commission who works on Empower, has been attending those meetings as well. So we're tracking closely and we're happy to stay in communication on that as well for next session.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. Does anyone have any questions for Lisa? Okay. Then I'll follow up with him. Okay. So, okay, well, I think we are done for today. Thank you for everyone's patience and diligence in going over the amendments. This is obviously not a short bill. It has lots of sections. Kristen, just want to check, was there any, let's see, the two changes that we made today. Oh, one I need to mention about the social cost of carbon. There was a change, and that was made in the second reprint, wasn't in the first one, but there's a part of the bill which requires the Department of Environment to do an economic study of the impact of the greenhouse gas reduction requirements.
Hey, Dana.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from the Sierra Club person if he would need a link. Do we need him anymore? I think we've resolved.
Yeah, I think so. I'll follow up with Josh Tolkien about this.
Okay.
Okay. So long story short, there is part of that study is to factor in the cost of carbon. And it said that the cost is to be determined by the department, but is to be no lower than $50 per ton. We struck the $50 per ton, thinking that we should, not knowing if $50 is really should be the floor, and deferring to the scientists at the department to calculate that. So that is a small change that has been made since the first reprint. Okay. So we won't be doing a vote today on this, but we do need to schedule it for tomorrow.
Right.
So if everyone has their calendar.
Yeah, and just to let people know that we're now at a point in the session where we're going to be voting almost every day as a committee. So just, a heads up to the newer people. That means you, Marlon. So just an FYI.
So
tomorrow's Thursday, right?
Let's see, first session, Mr. Chairman, is at 10, is that right?
Yeah, here's what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to have a very quick session in the morning, and then a couple of hours, and then we're coming back at noon, perhaps, and then having a longer session. I think that's what I heard the speaker say. So, I don't know what that does to my hearings at 1:30, but I mean, well, what say you? I mean, we'll be at 10. So do you?
Yeah, I was thinking if the 10 a.m. session is going to be quick, could we have subcommittee at 11?
I mean, I don't have a problem with that personally.
Is everyone else okay with that?
Yeah.
Does that give you enough time to make the changes we talked about?
Did you ask me if that's enough time for me?
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, well, let's aim for 11 o'clock. Again, we'll be voting on the amendments tomorrow. So hopefully it won't be as long a session as today, but again, appreciate everyone's time.
Okay. Ugh, damn it.
Any final questions or comments before we adjourn?
Just want to thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for all your work on this, and thank Kristen for all your work as well.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Thank you, Kristen.
Yep, you guys are doing a lot of good work.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so